The Humvee exploded in a fireball that turned the Iraqi desert into a screaming inferno, hurling Private First Class Danny Torres into a nightmare he'd never unsee. On December 17, 2005, near Yusufia, the blast didn't just steal his legs. It ripped apart the life of a 24-year-old from El Paso, Texas, who'd once dreamed of mountains under a sky too big for borders. What kind of man survives that? The kind with a crooked grin that could charm the devil. A kid nicknamed Lucky by his squad for dodging death more times than fate should allow, until it didn't. How does a soldier go from running track in high school to crawling through blood-soaked sand? His future shredded in an instant. That day, as the dust settled and his screams faded, Danny's story didn't end. It began. A tale of wreckage and redemption that would one day lead him to the roof of the world. Curiosity might pull you in, but it's the fire in his soul that'll keep you here, wondering. What drives a man to climb Everest when he can barely stand? Step into the desert with him, feel the heat, hear the chaos, because this is where Danny Torres was broken and where he'd start to rise. The sun hung low over the Iraqi desert on December 17, 2005, casting long shadows across the cracked earth near Yusufia. Private First Class Danny Torres, a lean 24-year-old from El Paso, Texas, sat in the passenger seat of a Humvee, his M4 rifle resting across his lap. His squad, part of the 101st Airborne Division, had nicknamed him Lucky after he dodged sniper fire and shrapnel on more patrols than anyone could tally. With his crooked grin and quick wit, Danny was the kind of soldier who could make even the grimmest checkpoint feel like a backyard barbecue. He'd enlisted at 19, fueled by the patriotic fervor of post-9/11 America and a restless urge to escape the dusty monotony of his border town life. His dad, Miguel, a mechanic who died of a heart attack when Danny was 16, had filled his head with dreams of mountains, rugged peaks in old National Geographic magazines they'd pore over together. "Someday, Mijo," Miguel would say, tapping a photo of Everest, "we'll stand up there." That day in Iraq, the air was thick with tension and the metallic tang of dust. Danny's squad, Sergeant Eric Hensley, Corporal Jamal Carter, and Private Lee Nguyen, was on a routine sweep, escorting a supply convoy through a stretch of road littered with hidden threats. Eric, a broad-shouldered Alabamian with a booming laugh, drove the Humvee, while Jamal, a wiry ex-Marine from Atlanta, manned the radio. Lisa, a sharp-eyed medic from California, kept watch from the turret. They'd been together for 8 months, a tight-knit crew forged in the crucible of war. Danny cracked a joke about the heat. "Feels like Satan's oven out here," and the others chuckled, the sound cutting through the hum of the engine. Then came the blast. An IED, buried shallow beneath the road, erupted in a deafening roar. The Humvee flipped, metal twisting, glass shattering. Danny felt a white-hot jolt rip through him, his body flung like a rag doll. The world spun. Screams, smoke, the acrid stench of burning rubber. When he hit the ground, his ears rang, his vision blurred. He tried to stand, to fight, but his legs wouldn't move. Blood soaked the sand beneath him, dark and spreading fast. He saw them then, his legs or the mangled remnants, severed below the knees by the blast. Lisa's voice cut through the haze, shouting for a medevac as she tourniqueted his stumps. Eric dragged him clear, his face pale but steady. Jamal, clutching a bleeding arm, yelled into the radio. The chopper came fast, blades slicing the air, and Danny's world faded to black. He woke 6 days later at Walter Reed Army Medical Center, the sterile beep of machines his only tether to reality. The doctors delivered the news with clinical precision. Both legs gone, one above the knee, one below. His jaw wired shut from shrapnel, his right arm scarred like a jagged tapestry. First, Danny didn't react. He stared at the ceiling, the weight of his loss a boulder on his chest. The kid who'd run track, who'd climbed Sandia Peak with his dad, was now a shell, his dreams buried in the Iraqi sand. His mom, Maria, a nurse with a spine of steel, flew in from El Paso, her dark eyes brimming with tears she refused to shed. His little sister, Sophia, 14 and all gangly limbs, sat by his bed, reading Spider-Man comics in a voice that trembled but never broke. They were his anchors, but Danny couldn't feel them, not yet. Back home, the months bled into a gray haze. Maria cooked tamales, filling the small house with the scent of masa and chili, but Danny barely ate. Sophia tried to coax him out with stories of school, her bright chatter a lifeline he couldn't grasp. The painkillers came first, prescribed for the phantom agony in his missing legs. Then the whiskey, cheap bottles he'd stash under his bed. He'd drink until the edges blurred, until the nightmares of fire and blood softened into oblivion. Eric called from Birmingham, where he'd landed a job at a prosthetics clinic, but Danny brushed him off. "I'm fine," he'd lie, voice slurring. Jamal sent letters, his handwriting shaky from his own injuries, but Danny let them pile up unopened. Lisa, who'd made it out unscathed, visited once, her medic's calm replaced by quiet guilt. "We got you out," she said, but Danny just nodded hollow. One night, deep in a bottle, Danny sat on his bedroom floor, a loaded .45 in his hands. The weight felt final, a way to silence the endless loop of what-ifs. His finger brushed the trigger, his breath shallow. But then Sophia's laughter floated in from the kitchen, high and pure, cutting through the fog. He pictured her face, Maria's too, and the gun slipped from his grip, clattering to the floor. Tears burned his eyes, and he choked out, "I can't do this to them." It wasn't a triumph, not yet, just a flicker of something stubborn, something alive. The next morning, hungover and raw, he dialed Eric. "I'm drowning, man," he said, voice cracking. "Help me." Eric's reply was instant. "Get your ass to Birmingham. I've got something for you." And so began Danny Torres' climb. Not just up a mountain, but out of the abyss. Birmingham became Danny Torres' proving ground. A city of humid summers and rolling green hills that felt like a fresh canvas after the arid despair of El Paso. Eric Hensley, his lifeline from the war, wasted no time dragging him into biotech limb and brace on that first day in 2010. The clinic hummed with purpose, 3D printers whirring, resin sharp in the air, engineers tinkering with prototypes. Eric introduced Danny to Dr. Lena Patel, a biomechanics expert whose stern gaze softened only slightly as she unveiled his new prosthetics. Sleek carbon fiber legs with articulated joints and a promise of mobility beyond mere survival. "These aren't crutches," she said, her voice clipped but warm. "They're tools. Use them." Danny stared at the limbs, their alien sheen a stark contrast to the stumps he'd hidden under blankets for months, and felt a flicker of something. Hope, maybe, or defiance. Learning to walk was a brutal baptism. The first day, he strapped on the prosthetics in Biotech's gym, a cavernous space with padded floors and mirrored walls. His stumps chafed against the sockets, raw and untested, and his balance betrayed him. He took 2 steps and crashed, the thud echoing as Eric winced and Lena scribbled notes. "Again," she said, unyielding. Danny cursed himself, the war, the damn legs, but hauled himself up, sweat beading on his brow. He fell again, and again, each tumble a blow to his pride. Eric stayed close, coaching him through drills, parallel bars, weight shifts, slow marches, his voice a steady drumbeat. "You're still a soldier, Lucky. Fight for it." By week 3, the falls lessened, the steps grew surer, though his stumps bled and his muscles screamed. Jamal Carter rolled into town then, his left arm replaced by a high-tech prosthetic, his grin as infectious as ever. "Heard you're back in the game," he said, clapping Danny's shoulder. "Let's make it fun." Lisa Nguyen followed, her medic's calm intact despite the guilt she carried from Iraq. Now a physical therapist volunteering to help. The 4 of them, Danny, Eric, Jamal, Lisa, became a ragged unit, rebuilding him step by painful step. 6 months in, Danny traded whiskey for water, painkillers for purpose. The gym became his battlefield, weights clanging as his arms thickened, his core hardened. Eric tossed him a flyer one humid July evening in 2011. Operation Enduring Warriors 5K race. "Think you're ready?" he asked, smirking. Danny swapped his walking prosthetics for running blades, their springy curve a marvel of engineering. Race day dawned muggy and gray, the starting line crowded with vets and civilians. He ran or staggered, finishing dead last, his stumps throbbing, but he crossed the line with a grin that hadn't surfaced since before the blast. Strangers cheered, slapping his back, and Jamal, who'd run beside him, whooped, "That's my boy!" The spark ignited a blaze. Danny tackled Tough Mudders next, slogging through mud-slicked courses, scaling walls with Jamal's one-armed assists and Lisa's shouted cues. Spartan races followed, obstacle after obstacle, his blades digging into dirt, his will forged anew. The crew grew. Other vets joined, some limbless, some scarred inside, a brotherhood of grit and sweat. The Everest dream took root in October 2015, over cheap beers at Eric's cramped apartment. Danny flipped on a documentary, Everest, Beyond the Limit, and the screen filled with climbers battling ice, wind, and altitude. The peak loomed, a jagged titan shrouded in clouds, and Danny's chest tightened. He saw Miguel's face, heard his voice. "Someday, Mijo." Jamal caught his stare. "What's cooking, Torres?" Danny pointed at the TV. "That, I'm climbing it." Jamal choked on his beer, laughing. "Everest? You're insane." "I'm in." Lisa, sprawled on the couch, raised an eyebrow. "You'll need a medic." "Count me." Eric grinned, already plotting gear.
"Guess I'm logistics."
The idea was mad, impossible, but it stuck like a burr. Planning consumed years. Danny and Jamal trained on Cheaha Mountain, Alabama's highest peak at 2,407 feet. A far cry from Everest, but a start. They hauled 50-pound packs up rocky trails, their prosthetics grinding against stone, sweat soaking their shirts. Eric sourced equipment, blades with ice spikes, a heated arm for Jamal, while Lisa studied altitude sickness, her medical texts piling up. In 2017, they met Coach Hank Rawls, a grizzled climber with a scar across his cheek and a resume of peaks. Denali K2 Annapurna. "Everest'll eat you alive if you're not ready," he growled, eyeing their prosthetics with skepticism. "But I've trained worse. Let's see what you've got." Rawls turned their hikes into boot camps, ropes courses, ice walls at a local rink, endurance runs in Alabama's sweltering heat. Priya Sharma joined in 2019, a photojournalist from Atlanta whose brother died in Afghanistan. Thin and sharp-edged, she carried a Nikon and a mission. Document their climb, honor her loss. "You're crazy," she said, snapping Danny mid-pull-up. "I like it." Funding was a war of attrition. They scraped savings, hit up veteran groups, pitched sponsors, biotech, REI, a prosthetic startup called FlexStep. By 2023, they had enough. Flights booked, gear packed, permits secured. April 2025 found them in Kathmandu, Nepal's chaotic capital awash in prayer flags and diesel fumes. Climbers buzzed with pre-season nerves, their chatter a mix of bravado and dread. Base camp sprawled at 17,600 feet, a frozen tent city ringed by jagged peaks, the air thin and biting. Their Sherpa, Tenzing Dorje, met them there, short, wiry, with eyes like polished obsidian. "The mountain decides," he said, his voice a soft anchor. Danny's prosthetics, upgraded with spikes and battery heaters, felt heavy in the altitude. Jamal's arm whirred faintly. Lisa checked oxygen tanks. Priya's camera clicked. Rawls scanned the horizon, grunting, "Let's move." The Khumbu Icefall was their first gauntlet, a shifting labyrinth of ice towers and crevasses at 18,000 feet. Danny's blades slipped on slick surfaces, his arms straining as he hauled himself up ropes, avalanches rumbling in the distance. Jamal's prosthetic froze mid-pull, hydraulic seizing, and Lisa thawed it with a heat pack, her gloved hands steady despite the wind's howl. Rawls barked orders, "Left foot now," while Tenzing led with uncanny calm, his ice axe marking the path. A serac collapsed nearby, showering them with shards, and Priya's lens caught Danny's grimace. Camp I at 19,500 feet offered no reprieve. Danny's stumps ached, the cold seeping into his bones, his breath ragged. Priya interviewed him by lantern light, her recorder humming. "Why this?" she asked. He stared at the tent wall, breath fogging. "To prove I'm more than what I lost." Camp 2, 21,000 feet, brought a blizzard, winds roaring at 60 miles an hour, pinning them in tents for 3 days. The canvas bucked, ice pellets drumming, and Danny's mind drifted to Maria's tamales, Sophia's laugh now matured at college. Jamal cracked jokes. Everest just mad we didn't RSVP, keeping spirits afloat, while Lisa monitored frostbite risks, her fingers tracing their pulses. Rawls grumbled about delays, but Tenzing sat cross-legged, staring at the storm as if reading its soul. When it broke, they pushed to Camp 3, 24,000 feet. The air so thin Danny's head throbbed like a drum. A climber from a French team slipped on the Lhotse face. His scream cut short as he vanished into a crevasse. Priya's camera stilled, her face ashen. "This is real," she whispered, voice trembling. Camp 4, the south call at 26,000 feet, was the death zone, where oxygen starves the body, where corpses lie frozen as warnings. Danny saw one, a parka faded to pink, its occupant curled in eternal sleep, and felt the mountain's cold indifference. Exhaustion clawed at them. Jamal's arms sparked. Lisa's fingers swelled. Rawls coughed blood into his sleeve. The summit push launched at midnight, May 14, 2025, headlamps slicing the dark. The balcony at 27,500 feet tested their resolve. Danny's right blade caught, twisting, and he nearly fell, saved by Tenzing's rope. The Hillary step loomed next, a 40-foot rock wall, sheer and brutal. Danny's prosthetics clawed at ice, his arms burning as he pulled upward, stumps screaming in their sockets. Jamal slipped, dangling over a 1,000-foot drop, and Danny lunged, grabbing his harness, muscles tearing. "Not today," he growled, hauling him back. Lisa's oxygen mask fogged as she climbed. Priya's camera shook. Rawls' voice crackled. "Keep going!" The wind screamed, a banshee's wail, as they neared the top. Danny's right prosthetic cracked, the socket splitting, forcing him to limp. Jamal's arm seized again. Priya's frostbitten fingers fumbled, dropping her spare battery into the abyss. Tenzing urged them on, his calm unshaken. At 8:49 a.m., May 15, 2025, they stood on Everest summit, 29,032 feet, clouds swirling below, peaks piercing the sky. Danny planted a flag and Miguel's photo, tears freezing on his cheeks. Jamal hooped. Lisa smiled through exhaustion. Priya snapped the shot. Rawls roared over the radio. Tenzing bowed to the peak. "We did it," Danny whispered, the wind stealing his words. The descent was a crucible. Oxygen tanks dwindled. Jamal's arm failed. Danny's cracked prosthetic slowed him to a crawl. A crevasse yawned beneath Rawls, Tenzing's rope snagging him from a 200-foot plunge. Lisa's frostbitten hands bled through her gloves. Priya's camera died. They stumbled into base camp on May 17th, husks of themselves. Frostbite, hypoxia, eyes sunken, but alive. The mountain had pushed them to the edge, and they'd clawed their way back. The return to Birmingham was a whirlwind Danny Torres could scarcely comprehend. The city, with its rolling hills and sticky summer air, seemed smaller now, dwarfed by the towering memory of Everest's icy embrace. News vans clogged Eric's quiet street within days of their arrival, their satellite dishes sprouting like mushrooms after rain. CNN ran a segment titled The Unbroken Five, a moniker that stuck like glue. Danny, Jamal, Lisa, Priya, and the unseen but ever-present coach Rawls, hailed as the first team of combat amputees and war survivors to conquer the world's highest peak together. Priya's photographs fueled the frenzy. Danny planting the flag against a sky so blue it hurt to look at, Jamal's triumphant grin framed by frost-crusted goggles, Lisa's steady gaze peering through an oxygen mask fogged with exhaustion. The images went viral, shared across X and Instagram, splashed on magazine covers from outside to Time. Sponsorship offers poured in, prosthetic companies, outdoor gear brands, even a brewery wanting to name a beer Summit Stout in their honor. Veteran organizations across the country sent letters, medals, invitations to speak. It was a tidal wave of recognition, but Danny, ever the reluctant hero, shied from its glare. He found refuge on Eric's weathered porch that first week back, a chipped red cooler at his feet and a Coke sweating in his hand. The fireflies were out, tiny sparks weaving through the dusk, and the hum of cicadas filled the silence. Sophia arrived the next day, fresh off a flight from El Paso, her nursing school textbooks tucked under one arm. At 22, she was taller now, her gangly teenage frame filled out, but her eyes still held that same fierce light. She threw her arms around him, burying her face in his shoulder. "You're still my hero, Danny," she said, her voice cracking as tears soaked his shirt. He hugged her back, tighter than he meant to, feeling the years of distance melt away. Maria came too, stepping off the bus with a suitcase and a weary smile, her dark hair streaked with more gray than he remembered. She cupped his face in her calloused hands, her eyes searching for him. "You climbed for Miguel," she said, her voice thick with pride and something softer, relief, maybe, that her boy had come home, not just from Iraq, but from the shadows that had swallowed him since. "And for us?" she added, pulling him into an embrace that smelled of masa and home. The others scattered to their own reckonings. Jamal, ever the spark plug, poured his energy into a dream he'd hatched on the descent. A gym for adaptive athletes, a place where vets and civilians alike could rebuild their bodies and spirits. He called it peak potential, leasing a rundown warehouse in downtown Birmingham and filling it with climbing walls, weight racks, and a crew of trainers who understood scars, visible or not. His laugh echoed through the space as he coached a double amputee vet through a pull-up, his own prosthetic arm whirring faintly. Lisa, quieter but no less driven, opened a physical therapy clinic 2 miles away, her hands, still bearing faint scars from Everest's frostbite, working to heal others' wounds. She hired vets as staff, her office a sanctuary of calm amid the city's bustle. Her clipboard swapped for a tablet, but her steady presence unchanged. Priya's book, Beyond the Edge, hit shelves 6 months later, a raw, unflinching account of their climb woven with her photos and reflections on loss. Her brother's death in Afghanistan a thread that tied her to the team. She donated half the proceeds to veteran mental health programs, her sharp edges softened by the purpose she'd found. Coach Rawls, grumbling about the damn city noise, retreated to a cabin in the Alabama woods, his satellite phone buzzing with offers to train other climbers. He sent Danny a single text, "You did good, kid. Don't screw it up now." Tenzing, back in Nepal, mailed a package that arrived on a crisp fall day. A prayer flag, its colors faded from wind and sun, with a note in his careful script, "For the summit and the journey home." Danny hung it above his bed in the small apartment he'd rented near Eric's place, its gentle flutter a reminder of the mountain's lessons. He didn't chase fame, though it chased him. He started speaking, at VA hospitals, high schools, community centers, his story pared down to its bones. It's not about the peak, it's about the climb, the people who pull you up, the ones you carry with you. His voice, once slurred with whiskey, grew steady, his crooked grin returning as he spoke to rooms of wide-eyed kids or grizzled vets nodding in recognition. He'd pause at the end, showing a photo of the summit, him, the flag, Miguel's faded picture, and say, "This wasn't for me, it was for them." Life settled into a rhythm, but Everest's echo lingered. Danny took a job at Biotech Limb and Brace, working under Dr. Patel to design prosthetics for other vets, his hands learning the tools that had rebuilt him. He'd spend evenings at Jamal's gym, spotting trainees or climbing the wall himself, his prosthetics creaking but sure. Lisa would drop by, her clinic's paperwork swapped for a beer, and they'd trade quiet stories of the war, hers of triage under fire, his of the blast that changed everything. Priya visited when her book tour swung south, her camera still clicking, capturing Danny mid-laugh or Jamal mid-rant. Eric, ever the glue, hosted barbecues, his backyard a haven where the crew could just be. No cameras, no mountains, just the bond forged in blood and ice. Years rolled on, and Danny's hair thinned, his scars faded to pale lines. Sophia graduated nursing school, married a soft-spoken engineer named Carlos, and had 2 kids, Mateo and Elena, who'd toddle into Danny's apartment calling him Grandpa Danny. He'd hoist them onto his shoulders, their small hands tugging at his ears, and take them hiking on Chiha Mountain, the same trails he'd trained on a decade before. Grandpa Danny beat the biggest mountain in the world, Mateo would brag, his 5-year-old voice ringing with awe, and Elena, 3 and fearless, would demand, "Tell us again." So he would, sitting on a rock with the kids at his feet, the Alabama sun dipping low. He'd weave the tale of the blast that took his legs, the darkness that nearly took his soul, the climb that gave him both back. He'd linger on the details, Jamal dangling over the void, Lisa's hands steady in the storm, Priya's lens catching their grit, Tenzing's calm guiding them home. The kids' eyes would widen at the Hillary step, their gasps loud at the summit, and he'd finish with a quiet truth. It wasn't about getting to the top. It was about who I became on the way. One spring, when Mateo was 7 and Elena 5, Danny took the family back to El Paso. Maria, slower now but still fierce, insisted on cooking a feast. Tamales, enchiladas, a tres leches cake that Sofia swore was better than ever. They sat in the backyard of the old house, the Sandia Mountains looming in the distance, and Danny felt a pang for Miguel. He slipped away as the kids chased fireflies, climbing the creaky stairs to his childhood room. The prayer flag still hung there, its edges frayed, and he pulled a box from under the bed. Old photos, Miguel's National Geographic stash, a worn journal Danny had kept in Iraq. He flipped it open, the pages yellowed, and read an entry from before the blast. "Dad's mountain dreams keep me going. Maybe I'll climb one for him someday." He smiled, tracing the words, then tucked it away. Back outside, Maria handed him a beer, her eyes sharp despite the years. "You're different now," she said. Not a question but a fact. "Stronger." He nodded, watching Sofia corral the kids, Carlos laughing as Elena smeared cake on his shirt. "I had to fall apart to figure that out," he said, voice low. "But I didn't climb alone." Maria squeezed his hand, her grip firm, and they sat in silence, the desert night wrapping around them like a blanket. Danny Torres wasn't just lucky anymore, nor the broken vet who'd once held a gun to his head. He was a man who'd scaled Everest. Not the peak itself, but the summit within, built from the wreckage of war and the love of those who'd refused to let him fall. The mountain had tested him, stripped him bare, but it had also shown him what endured. Not legs, not fame, but the fragile, fierce thread of humanity that binds us. In every step, up Chiha with his grandkids, through Jamal's gym, past Lisa's clinic, beneath Priya's flag, he carried them all and they carried him. Everest wasn't the end. It was a mirror, reflecting a life shattered and remade. A legacy not of conquest, but of connection, raw and resilient and forever unbroken. Danny Torres' journey, from the fiery chaos of an Iraqi desert to the frozen summit of Everest, is more than a tale of survival. It's a testament to the human spirit's stubborn refusal to break. He lost his legs, nearly his life, but found something greater. A purpose forged in pain, lifted by love, and cemented on the world's highest peak. What can we take from this? That falling isn't failing. It's the first step to climbing higher. That the people who hold us up, Maria, Sofia, Eric, Jamal, Lisa, are the real summits worth reaching. You, reading this, have your own mountains, maybe not Everest, but challenges that loom just as large. What's your climb? Who's your crew? Danny's story whispers a challenge. Find them, fight for them, rise with them. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below with your own struggles or triumphs. If this moved you, hit that like button and subscribe to Daily Narrate Stories for more tales of grit and grace. Every week, Daily Narrate Stories brings you heroes like Danny, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Join our community, share your voice, and let's climb together.